is up, everybody? Good Monday evening. If it's a good Monday evening for that matter. A lot of people just don't like Mondays whatsoever. Myself included a little bit, but it is what it is. Work and life. But what's up? Touchdown Talk episode 7 comes to you this week. Glad to be able to continue to keep the show going. Lindy Enzone is in the building again for the touchdown, taking the lead for the Philadelphia Eagles, one video at a time. But this time, we're keeping the show going, as I have said. Touchdown Talk episode 7 coming to you live with my guest this week to start off the week. BLSG, been quite a while since you have been on the channel, and it's good to have you once again. And of course, with everybody connected as close as they are relatively in the Eagles content creator community. Sometimes we have to get a little bit of refresher on what everyone's opinion is on what they have witnessed throughout the past season, and we're going to be going over that this evening. But how has your Monday have been up to this point?
Monday's been pretty good, just hoping our Eagles can make some decent moves in the offseason. Hopefully we can be a better team the next year, and hopefully we can beat some of these tough playoff teams that we'll have coming up.
Yeah, and it's good that you mentioned the playoff teams, because I think that's a good direction to start.
They noticed last year in the regular season too, like the Chiefs did, the Cowboys, for instance. You could technically say the Niners, even though they beat us by a touchdown. You could say Tampa Bay. There are a few other teams I'm thinking of. Just not running up into my head.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting enough that we have played a good plethora of teams who are currently in the playoffs or have been in the playoffs, and just to watch us and how we stacked up to them, we knew that we knew after those results that we're pretty undermanned. But speaking of those playoffs and continuing to see how this year's has unfolded, and watching those games of epic proportion over the weekend, whether it was the Rams against the Bucs or the Bills and Kansas City Chiefs, and what a wild game that was. But in perspective to the Eagles, of course, I have to, I got to ask, what has the playoffs told you in extra assessment on where you think the Eagles are right now compared to those more successful teams? And at what point do you think that we may have a shot to get there talent-wise?
I definitely think that compared to this year from last year, it definitely has shown some improvement. I'm not going to lie about that. We definitely improved from last year. It's just that the problem was, though, we beat teams that were either like really banged up, or we beat teams that really were not playoff contenders. I mean, I understand that we beat the Falcons week 1. We beat the Panthers in a comeback win. That was probably our toughest win on the year. We beat the Saints, but they were banged up. We swept the Washington football team. We beat the Giants once, but those are not playoff contenders right there. Playoff contenders, like I said before, Buccaneers, Chiefs, Cowboys. You could technically kind of say Saints if they were a little bit healthier, but I'm not going to really put them in. But it taught me that we did improve from last season. It's just that if we want to continue to have success, and if we want to continue and try to be better than what we were last year, we got to beat some of these playoff teams. I mean, if you're not going to be playoff teams, you're not going to get far in the playoffs. And that's why we need to rebuild this year and do what we need to do in order for whatever it takes for us to be a big threat in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, sure, definitely, and we know that it is said, sometimes you know, the record says what you are, but I mean, in the case for the Eagles, that context it's skewed a little bit, and it's been under, it's been under some criticism, and people want to say all they want that, oh, we beat up on crappy teams in the second half, but I've been saying it the last few days. Bad teams do not beat bad football teams. It just doesn't work that way. You have to have some sort of competence to be able to carry out that job, because you have to you gotta defeat you gotta defeat what's placed in front of you. That's just you gotta beat who's placed in front of you. That's basically how it works. That's how it works, especially in the playoffs. It's win or go home. So I mean, we can't get carried away with that at the same time, and you know it's these playoffs are telling us quite a lot in terms of where our football team is. Whether it's the quarterback, and we are going to say the quarterback. Yeah, there's no denying it, but it's and of course we're in another house divided situation right now. There's it's again the Hurts haters, and then there's the Hurts apologists, just like there was Wentz haters and Wentz apologists. We're like, nobody is ever going to be on the same page when it comes to Philadelphia Eagles quarterbacks. That's how it's always been. That's how it always will be. We're going to have that hunger for the Super Bowl no matter what. And if fans want to try and hit the fast forward button in certain areas, they're going to try and do that. But that's not the way it works. And a lot of the attention is being drawn to the quarterback now. So because of that, let's go there first. All right, we'll entertain it. We'll go there first. And okay, so we already know how what Jalen Hurts did and didn't do in his first playoff start against the defending Super Bowl champions in hostile territory, and all other things considered. That I'm not going to sound like a broken record again. We know what he was up against. We know what he had at his disposal. But I gotta know. Of course, I gotta know your opinion on this. And what, like, how did you analyze the game that Hurts presented to you? The analysis of everything. How did he look in that game? And where are you now in terms of him being your quarterback? Did anything change?
I mean, really, in terms of what I think of Jalen Hurts based on his performance in the Buccaneers game, like, you gotta look at it this way. I mean, Jalen Hurts is still young, and he's going up against pretty much the GOAT, and he's going up against a pretty good defense. But what I saw out of that game, I thought I saw Jalen Hurts. I thought I saw him, like, he was off to like a really slow start, and honestly, that you can't do that, especially against playoff teams. But Jalen Hurts is still a young quarterback, and I can understand that. But I also saw that Jalen Hurts was having a few problems with accuracy, which that was key. What a few of us were saying for Jalen Hurts to be able to succeed in the playoffs. And also, I really thought that Jalen Hurts also had a problem in pocket presence, because everybody was constantly getting to Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts, when he never had the opportunity to escape, he was never able to scramble out of the pocket, and he just had to stay in the pocket, and then he ended up taking the sack. So I definitely think, in terms of next year on what Jalen Hurts needs to do in terms of what he needs to get better at, I think it needs to be pocket presence. He needs to read the defense, read the field, and I think also just accuracy, because he's still young, and he still needs to continue to develop and get better in this league. I can understand that. But keep in mind, it's going to take time when you have a young quarterback that didn't play all of his full years in college. He didn't play a full season at Alabama. He played a few years at Oklahoma. And honestly, you really can't say that you can't give up on Jalen Hurts yet because he hasn't mainly had the full experience and he hasn't been able to get all of what he needs to be a franchise quarterback yet. But Jalen Hurts, if he can just get better at his pocket presence and his accuracy, is what I think he needs to fix up. I think Jalen Hurts next year can be a bigger threat, but not the biggest threat in the league in terms of just getting better at what he does in his role.
Would you say Hurts would be a little more closer to fringe top 10?
Wait, who's top 10?
I'm saying, based on your analysis, would you say that Hurts has the potential to be a fringe top 10 quarterback next year?
Well, I mean that's all going to depend on Jalen Hurts. If his pocket presence can get better, if he can read the field better, and if his accuracy can get better, it's going to depend on those three things right there to see if Jalen Hurts can potentially be a top 10 quarterback. So I really cannot decide that right now until I see it next year.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fair. And I'm right with you on that. So, if we go over your analysis with this, we're seeing, we're hearing the lack of being able to read the defense consistently, accuracy issues, and while velocity is something you can't necessarily teach, but you can do things to help you can do things to help strengthen that. That's something else that that's something else that a lot of us are wanting us to. That's something a lot of us are looking for him to get better at. But with velocity comes timing, and I don't think you can have one over the other if you want to be a successful quarterback. I mean, you can be a gunslinger like Josh Allen, but if your timing's off, then you're not gonna hit your receivers in stride, and you're gonna make it more difficult for them to catch the football. The rhythm of the offense is going to be off, and et cetera, et cetera. The offensive line can't do its job in terms of pass protection,
protecting your quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of factors to consider here, but when we're looking at Jalen Hurts at face value, we had to almost expect a lot of these things to happen, and like we have said, he has only started maybe 4 games total as a rookie.
That's how many started in 2020. When you count all the full games that Jalen Hurts has played in 2020, he started 4 games in 2020. That was week 14 against the Saints, week 15 against the Cardinals, week 16 against the Cowboys, and then week 17 against Washington. Yeah. And then this year, he played technically a full year apart from 2 games, but that was mainly just rest for himself when we were facing up against the New York Jets when we had to replace Jalen Hurts with Gardner Minshew. And the same thing went into the end of the season, week 18, when we faced up against the Dallas Cowboys. But I'm technically considering that a full season because Jalen Hurts played most of the games.
Yeah, of course, and that's all and that's all we're asking for in terms of development to want him to get better, because not only do we want that for our football team, but also that's in part of his responsibility. Like, he has an obligation to that, and when I think about it. If I had the option to upgrade that position right now, call me crazy if you want, but I still wouldn't do it. Especially when the quarterback is not the biggest problem on this football team. I don't care what quarterback you're putting under center for the Eagles. They're not going to make a difference in terms of us getting to the Super Bowl. Yeah, they're going to win a couple more games and put us in a better position of seeding, but you can't tell me that you can't tell me that this team is going to have more success in the playoffs because like we have seen with teams in the playoffs. They're just built better as a whole. These teams are built better as a whole. Better better talent, more, um, just more talent, just more talent as a whole outside of the quarterback. And sometimes that's what win or loses football games. Um, you know, and when we talk about development with this quarterback, we got 3 first round picks. We got three first round picks. The defense is in dire need of help. We got questions on offensive linemen returning. Who's gonna be back? How is it going to shake up the rotations? Yada yada. It only costs about $1.2 million to develop this quarterback this coming off season. That's all Hurts counts against the cap. $1.2 million. I mean, what's the better value here? You getting rid of the majority of your best assets for for a for an elite quarterback that has to play with a bunch of holes around him, or are you going to invest the time in improving the court in hoping the quarterback that you have improves enough, and then build a better team around him that he has more capability to take said players deeper into the playoffs. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at this situation and it feels like a no brainer to me. Like I said, to me, there's holes on this team bigger than the quarterback right now. And of course, because this being Philly, sometimes fans think all it takes is a quarterback to win, and that's just not true. What I mean, so in turn, are you on the same page with this, BLSG, in terms of you either trading for a better quarterback like a Deshaun Watson, or if Aaron Rodgers is still in the league or what have you, or even drafting a quarterback early this year, or like or do you want to use those picks to build up this football team to give your quarterback a better chance at succeeding? I don't know. It feels like a no-brainer to me. And I think I already know your answer on this.
Well, it honestly, in my opinion, you could have this as a 50-50 shot. I mean, but you want to go, if you want to be a successful football team, you need to go for what you need. I'm truly like, if I were to go out and get an emergency quarterback right now, because if we need help at the quarterback position, and if we think that Gardner Minshew is not going to be great as a backup, or if we think Jalen Hurts is not going to be that great as a starter, if we're thinking that is the case, then yes, I would go out and get a veteran quarterback in the offseason. But I'm going to actually stick with Jalen Hurts because I still think he has something left in the tank, and I still think he can show us something. And in terms of drafting a quarterback, do you really want to go ahead and bring another new guy into Philly? I mean, that's going to take even more time to even try to even do that, because rookies are going to have to develop even more, and rookies, they don't get it after the first year. Like a lot of people say, it takes about 2 or 3 years for one rookie to be the best that they can be, and that's what Jalen Hurts is in terms of a situation right now. It's going to probably take him about 2 or 3 years. Now, I know he's played 1.25 years in the league already, but I don't care if that's the case. I'm still riding with Jalen Hurts, and I think he can bring us something to the table, as long as what I said before needs to improve. You know what it was before. As long as he improves in those 3 categories, I think he can show us something next season, and I think he definitely can develop and be a much better quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to call it obvious, because I mean, if we're to have, and God, this is a terrible, this, you could call this a terrible comparison if you want, because there's a higher investment to this. But if we were able to have as much patience in Carson Wentz, then you know what could we possibly have in Jalen Hurts? You just don't know if you're not willing to take that chance. Now, of course we had a higher obligation to Carson because he was the second pick in the 2016 draft, and and at that point we were looking for a franchise guy. I mean, the team, after them spending the draft capital and for how expensive Sam Bradford was, they were still willing to take that chance. And you don't know if you don't know if you don't take that chance. And right now, I mean, we could be worse off, and I think it's getting blown out of proportion. Is you know do Do we want Hurts to be in a better position right now as a quarterback? We absolutely do. But to me, we could be worse off right now, and especially the fact that, again, I'm sounding like a broken record, but to me, there's bigger holes on this football team than the quarterback position, and until those are addressed, it's not going to help the means of it's not going to help the means of wanting our quarterback to succeed if you don't address the other positions of need. But before we get to continue on with this, of course, I do have to say my hellos to some in the chat. As Jordy Fighter has been in here, another Eagles content creator, actually the owner of 3 different podcasts. I count that 4 different podcasts. Shout out to you, Angel3, always a devout listener and viewer of videos and live streams every time I do them. Appreciate you as well. And BPS, Big Play Slaying, also announcing his presence in the house. What is going on, everybody? And if you would do so, like I have with all the other previous episodes, also give a quick click to BLSG's channel. It only takes a second to hit that link in the description. See what he brings to the table in terms of his content, and with you clicking on the show that I'm producing right now, it's only fair that you see what he has to offer. And if you like it, the subscription button is also free, so don't be afraid to do that. Now, since we're still on the conversation of offense, when we're talking about the primary guy, the main guy, we've already discussed Jalen Hurts, and I think the two of us know where each other stands in terms of that. We want to see this kid continue to develop, and well, yeah, he's got the time to. He's only 23 years old. So, I mean, for perspective, Russell Wilson's 10 years older than him. And to me, we're not in a position right now. The team is not in a position right now, to me, where they're a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. They're just absolutely not. Absolutely not.
We have too many other holes to fill in terms. But mainly, if you want to look at which side of the ball we need to fill more holes in, I would honestly say the defense, to be honest, because the defense when we played Tampa Bay in the wild card round, unacceptable is the only word I need to describe it with. Absolutely unacceptable. You let Brady walk down the field and score 31 points on you, and then you come back and score 2 garbage time touchdowns. Absolutely unacceptable. This defense has got to build up, and I think we need to mainly focus on defense in the offseason, because this defense got to step up, and we might want to bring some veterans. We might want to bring in some like middle-aged guys to hopefully not be too injury prone, but at the same time go out there so they can be the best that they can be. But I think this defense is what we need to mainly focus on right now. And then the offense will come. They can produce. But I really think our focus in this offseason is mostly going to be defense.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, judging by how the defense has as inconsistently looked as it was this year. But we'll get to the defense a little bit later, and we're still going to we're still going to keep on the topic of the offense, because after the quarterback, he's got playmakers, and well, maybe the lack thereof outside of a few selections on this football team. So let's start with I guess we'll start with what the bread and butter or the identity became of this football team late into the year, and we can look at the running back position a little quickly here. And while that room consisted of Kenny Gainwell, Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard, Boston Scott, Jason Huntley, for what it's worth, he got activated one
Only in
time.
the last game of the season when he played against the Cowboys.
Yeah, so. Well, we'll start with the assessment of the running back position first and go from there. But what, and of course, the fact that Jordan Howard is set to become a free agent, and I think Boston Scott is as well. There's already word on the fact that people think Miles Sanders did not earn an extension yet. So, being that this has been one of the, if not the primary identity of this football team, is the running game. And more specifically, this team likes to do a run by committee approach. What has your assessment been of the running game this year? Well, not counting the beginning of the season when it was nowhere to be found too many times.
And we know what happened in that situation. And you know what? We don't need to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. So how would you assess the running back position right now going forward, and any changes that you would like to see?
Well, I definitely think I really like what I saw out of the second half of the season. The first half of the season, in terms of our run game, was an absolute disaster. I mean, we had very few carries, and we weren't playing up to our strengths. And Sirianni, that was when he was not as used to being a head coach as what he originally was when he was an offensive coordinator. I mean, offensive coordinator and head coach are two different roles on your coaching staff, and that was our first year when we had Sirianni, especially as a head coach, because that's when we fired Doug Peterson, and we knew we had to hire somebody to take that head coaching role, and apparently we ended up taking Nick Sirianni. And in the beginning, he was a little rusty. He literally ignored the run game. But in the second half of the season, when Nick Sirianni goes to the press conference and starts up his flower talk, the flowers are blooming, the fertilizer is in the ground, the flowers are growing, all that good stuff. As soon as all that happens, boom, the Eagles, they start their run game. That's how the run game started. The run game started just like that as soon as Nick Sirianni went to the press conference and started his flower quote and was talking about flowers and hashtag flowers everywhere for that one. But I definitely think that this, in terms of this run game, I really think in the second half it was definitely a lot better, and how I can see it going forward. As long as Sirianni keeps doing the same thing and keeps running the ball, and as long as we keep playing up to our strengths, I definitely think that this running game can definitely be a threat to the NFL teams in 2022. But since we did have the best rushing attack last year, a lot of teams are going to be playing much harder on us, and that's something that the Eagles' rushing attack has to look out for.
Yeah, and we can't imagine that we're going to have repeat success in the magnitude that we did in terms of the run game for how inconsistent it was utilized very early in the season, and then we come on late in the second half, and of course you're going to hear the talk, oh well, you ran over the Detroit Lions, that wasn't impressive, or the Saints weren't healthy and this team wasn't healthy, and this team needed a different quarterback or y'all would have lost. I mean, of course, all the nitpicking is going to come out, but it still holds true. I mean, at that point, the garden was planted, the seeds were dropped, flowers have blossomed, and well,
the fertilizer was in the ground.
Yeah, well, Sirianni did that. But that's one thing that we consistently complained about, after after week one, is when when things started to go downhill a little bit, because week one, between week one and maybe another game for that matter, you can call you can call the Broncos game, you can call the Saints game, and you can call a couple of other games where this offense looked pretty balanced. And for whatever reason, I guess the result of week one wasn't flashy enough, or how we have speculated from time and time again that Jeffrey Lurie wants a specific product on how his football team looks on the field and throwing the ball all over the field. That maybe some of that had a little bit of influence there on a first year head coach, but that's not the here nor there. We're not gonna jump down that rabbit hole this evening. But you know one thing that we did keep harping on, like I said, outside of the inconsistency, there was the fact that it seemed that the talent of this offensive line was underutilized when we weren't running the football enough, especially when you have the array of athletic big men that you got on that offensive front. And how Mailata keeps improving game after game. Landon Dickerson put all the injury concerns to rest at that left guard position, to where you have the two the two towering giants on the left, on Jalen Hurts' blind side. Jason Kelsey being the best center in football again. That right guard spot was a bit shaky with injury, but guys came and went, and
we basically kind of rode with what we have. I mean, Brandon Brooks was there for the beginning of the season, and then we switched over to Nate Herbig, and then in the playoffs, we had to deal with freaking Suo Opeta, because we really didn't have those guys available to us, and we just didn't have much depth behind that. And if we did have any depth, it wasn't going to be good depth against the players we were going to be up against in terms of that defense.
Yeah, and Layden Johnson had some mental health concerns at one point, but he was able to power through, come back to the football team, and put on what looked to be a Pro Bowl season. How do you not have missed the amount of games that he did? But it's but still, I'm left to wonder how this committee is going to look next year. With the looming extension talks over the head of Miles Sanders, whether he's going to get one or not. Are we going to re-sign Jordan Howard? Is Jason Huntley going to remain on this football team if he makes it past OTAs? How is Kenny Gainwell going to take that next step in year two? Is he going to be a back that's more featured in the pass game, because a lot of his he has a lot of superior talent in that aspect to be dynamic, the way that we were hoping that Miles would take that next step ever since his rookie year. How dynamic he looked, not only as an explosive runner, but out there on wheel routes and getting wide open for Carson to hit him in stride when it was possible. But still, there was a lot of those elements to Miles that just weren't consistent enough. Part of it was on injury, and maybe we're trying to build that 1-2 punch with Kenny Gainwell. I mean, and that's still yet to be seen. He had his struggles in his rookie year. He's not the greatest in pass protection, like a lot of other Eagles running backs are on this roster. Miles is not great. Boston Scott's not great. I just talked about Kenny Gainwell. So this is going to be an interesting offseason in terms of how the depth is going to look with the running back spot, with all these questions going on in the back of our minds. And the last thing we need is inconsistency, especially with the offensive line that we still have intact. So if it was your decision to make, and knowing that you can try and squeeze one more year out of Miles and see if he is deserving of that extension, would you bring back Jordan Howard, or would you want Miles and Kenny Gainwell to lead the charge?
Well, I would kind of want the the other three, Miles, Kenny, and Boston Scott. But at the same time, depending on how much cap space we have, because I don't even know if we're in cap hell, or I don't even know what the situation is in terms of our cap space. But if we could bring Jordan Howard back, that would I wouldn't actually mind that, just because I really think Jordan Howard, what he showed us last year, he had a few big games. I know they were against some weak defenses, and I know he's had his ups and downs. But really, at the end of the day, no matter when you bring Jordan Howard in, or no matter what these guys do, they are helping out your football team, and that is really all that matters, because anything helps out the run game. And we averaged about close to 160 yards rushing per game. That was the number one rushing attack in the NFL right there. With the pieces that we had, Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, Jason Huntley in mainly week 17. I mean, that rushing attack right there, if you could bring everybody back for next season and maybe just, I don't know if you want to try to get one more piece. I think that might be a waste of cap space right there. But I think if you bring everybody back, if you bring the same rushing attack that you had from last year, I think you can give everybody one more go at it, because I know every defense is going to be a bit harder on you based on how well your rushing attack was from last year. They know you had the number one rushing attack last year. They know to go harder on you, and you know what? They're not going to fight. But if everybody comes back, we're not fight. We're not gonna try to lose the battle either. We're gonna keep fighting, and we're gonna stay in the battle for as long as it takes, and that will depend if we bring everybody back, which in my personal opinion, I really think what I would do.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's fine as well. I mean, let's remember, when Jordan Howard was cut by the Dolphins, nobody was inquiring about him at all, to the point where he was contemplating retirement. Like, is that going to be the end for Jordan Howard? So, being the fact that he found a role on this football team, and just based on how he looked or how he didn't look this year, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there's going to be much of a need for the type of back that Jordan Howard is in the NFL. It's almost a dying art that is the power back. A lot of teams want that dynamic kind of guy that can not only be explosive, on the edge, and try and break it upfield, along the sideline, but they can be a threat in the passing game as well. And being that Jordan is the opposite of that type of back, it's not going to be as attractive on the open market. So I don't think it would hurt for the Eagles to bring Jordan Howard back on a vet minimum. It's not like the 2017 situation where we're bringing in a 32-year-old LeGarrette Blount on a limited role. It's not like us trading for Jay Ajayi off of two ACO reconstructions. It's not like all that. And of course, yeah, Jordan Howard has had his baggage from an injury perspective, where he had a knee issue, and then the stinger tried to bother him again. But they're not as serious of an injury, as ACLs, and Jordan is not suffering from just being an older football player. I think he still has. I still think he has some time left in the NFL to make a little bit more money, barring how healthy he is currently. But based on where the Eagles are in terms of the running back position, if they don't like anybody enough in the draft per se, then I don't think it hurts all that much, considering you have the veteran minimum option on Jordan Howard to bring him back on a cheap deal. So just because of the fact that I don't believe the market is going to be as strong for him as he thinks it might turn out to be. So yeah, I can get along with that. I wouldn't be opposed to Jordan Howard returning. So, man, 40 minutes in already, and Doesn't feel we covered a whole lot, but we have gotten to some extensive conversations, and it's going well. It's going pretty well so far. And shout out to those that are contributing some sort of viewership, even though it's 1 to 4 viewers, whether it's 1 to 4, 10 to 14, or even 40. Any kind of support helps me out either way, and I'd rather have the respect of my peers in the community, and more so the fame of having a larger audience. I'm at that point in my content creation career, if you want to call it that. It's not much of a career, but it's a hobby, and I appreciate it all just the same. So, and that kind of appreciation reflects upon others. So don't be afraid to give a quick click to BLSG's channel. Another
Down in
one
the
that
description.
it is in the description. Another one that is trying to approach the 300 mark in subscribers. He's only about 25 to 26 away at
Now
274.
we're at 264. So 36 away.
264. Okay, yeah, I thought I seen 274.
36 away, yeah.
But either way, the goal stays the same, and that quick click is free. The subscription button is also free to click. It gives you extra entertainment throughout your day, whatever you're doing, and it helps us with that extra confidence booster. And because we love what we do, the hobby means different to everybody. So yeah, as much as I appreciate it, BLSG does as well, and do the same do the same in terms of support that you would do for me. Okay, now let's do a little bit more. Let's do a little bit more assessment here of the offense, and we'll keep on this page because, well, as we know, Jalen Hurts is not alone in terms of teammates, and he does need some quality playmakers. And outside of Dallas Goedert and Devonte Smith and a little bit of Quez Watkins and a little bit of that run game, he doesn't have much. And we'll get to the receiver core here and do a little bit of analysis. Devonte Smith, nothing much to question with him. He broke Deshaun Jackson's rookie receiving yards record as an Eagle franchise record. He broke that. You can say what you want about it taking an extra game for him to do so. That doesn't matter because and the NFL changes almost every year, so it is what it is in that regard. Excuse me. So besides Devonte Smith, with us looking at this receiving core and hearing what Sirianni had to say at his press conference about how he feels that Devonte Smith has the potential to be a number 1. He likes Quez Watkins at a 2, and then wait a minute. A first-round pick as a number 3 receiver. Whoa, well, that can't be right. Or a second-round pick limited to blocking assignments on offense. Well, that can't be right. But he's a good special teams player. Oh my God. It just gets worse and worse. So as we continue to shake our heads on this, BLSG, I got to know from you what is your take on the current status of this receiver group, and what do they need in terms of improvement that's going to add a little more consistency, add a little more pizzazz to help move the quarterback along here and build trust as a passer?
Yeah, I definitely think that there can be improvement on this team, but at the same time, I really do feel like that this receiver core has done pretty decent in my opinion. Devonte Smith, I feel like there's no questions with him. I really think that Devonte Smith definitely does have what it takes to be a successful receiver in this league. He definitely showed by breaking Deshaun Jackson's rookie record, like you said before. And he definitely has what it takes. He has the route running. He has the hands. And he was the Heisman last year. this kid, Devonte Smith, he can honestly do it all. I really have no questions with Devonte Smith. I think he really can be successful in this league, and I definitely think that he can be a threat. Now, in terms of Rager, I actually don't even want to discuss Rager because you want to know why? Rager needs to go, all right? I know it's only been 1 year for Rager in the league. Actually, technically 2 years because he also had
Yeah,
2020.
too.
But I don't give a crap about Rager, all right? Rager was one word, and that was a disgrace. Rager was a disgrace to
Hmm.
Philadelphia, and you know what? He needs to go. Regalor needs to go. Shout out to Philly 500, by the way. Rick always coming up with that. So, Regalor, you got to leave Philly. But you know what? It's what you get. You get what you get, and you don't get upset. And then Quez Watkins, he has the speed. I understand that. But if he can be a route runner like Devonte Smith, I would honestly be really good with that. I know he has the speed. I know he has what it takes to be a speedster, like Tyreek Hill, for instance. But also, you need to have that route running in you. I know you can't always just like take like little short routes, take like little hitches, and then use your speeding ability because eventually the defense is going to read that and they're going to find that out immediately on what you're going to do. So I definitely think that Quez Watkins definitely can have potential at being better on his route running ability. And then definitely in terms of J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I know he's a blocking receiver. I know he's not the greatest receiver in the world. I know he's more like a blocking receiver instead of like a receiver that actually does catch the ball. He only can get like 1 or 2 catches a game, for heaven's sakes. So definitely J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, I mainly do not want to discuss much. But if we want to do anything, I say we actually go out and maybe get a veteran wide receiver, depending on how much we're going to be in cap health for next year, because that definitely is going to depend on if we can get a veteran wide receiver instead of a rookie wide receiver in the draft, which I feel like we won't address wide receiver in this draft because I really just don't feel like another rookie is going to really help us out, and I feel like they're not going to be the same as Devonte Smith, the way that Devonte Smith turned out last year with his 5 TDs, his less than 100 yard away from 1,000 yard season, which was honestly a really good year for Devonte Smith. And if you want to go ahead and get another receiver, by all means, but that is going to depend on your cap space for next year. So I definitely say that if you can get a veteran wide receiver, bring him into Philly, and you know what? Let's see what they can do with this receiver core and have Jalen Hurts as their quarterback.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. Definitely. I mean, I somewhat agree with the premise of the draft and that's not going to be an immediate solution, but there is some quality receivers coming out of this draft class, and whether it's some of the Bama receivers or a guy like
And I
Chris
think
Olave.
one of them, I think Jameson Williams, the speedster, is one of them.
Williams and Chris Olave from Ohio State
Olave
would
is one
be
of them.
a
Garrett Wilson's
I mean, he
another.
would be a nice piece. So there is some quality talent available in
But a
the
few of them
draft.
are going in the. I feel like a few of them are going in the top 20. I know. Well, I know Garrett Wilson's going in the top 20. Williams is probably going in the top 20. Olave, he might. Who knows? Could he be in 20? Could he? I mean, he did kind of lack a little bit in his final year before he went to the NFL draft. Before he's going to elect for the NFL draft, he kind of lacked it a little bit with being under 1,000 yards and I think that's mainly what affected him was his last year as a receiver for Ohio State. And I definitely think that Olave kind of lacked it a little bit, and that lacked a little bit, and definitely lowered down on where he's going to be drafted and what draft pick he's going to be at. So I feel like in terms of receivers, I feel like Garrett Wilson could go before Chris Olave because the way Olave kind of lacked his last year at Ohio State. So I definitely think Olave could actually go later. He might be a late teens pick, it may be an early 20s pick, but he might not go earlier or any later than that. He's probably going to be in that range, and then Garrett Wilson's going to be like he's going to probably be like middle teens on where he's going. So he could probably go to another team that has a draft pick from maybe like pick number probably 12 to maybe 16 or 17. He could probably go around there. And honestly, I really feel like that I feel like Garrett Wilson is going to go before Olave because Olave lacked his last year as a receiver at Ohio State.
Yeah, and so I mean, and of course we don't have the draft as the only solution to add depth to this receiver room
We have
that
free agency. We have trades that we can make. But
so
it
I
but that
mean
it all comes down to one man in on our staff, and is the only man that can make anything happen on our staff, and it's Howie Roseman.
mhm.
It's all up
Yeah,
to him to make the moves. It's all up to Howie.
yeah, no doubt, and
And Howie, I'm watching you. Don't screw it up, please.
yeah, well, a lot of us are certainly watching Howie after some felt that gracing or blessing Hurts as the starting quarterback was just lip service, and it only goes on from there. But of course, the draft is not the only spot to where we can improve this receiving core. And in terms of wide receiver, there's really not a whole lot of depth for us to speak of here. And outside of those disappointing high draft picks, whether it's Rager or I think a Whiteside that have been here too long, so to speak, for a lot of the fan base to say that they have been here too long. You look at Quez Watkins, he's developing nicely, but to have it said that he could be a number two receiver, a little too premature. Devonte Smith just got off of his rookie season. Did not disappoint whatsoever. Does he still need to put on a little bit of muscle weight? Sure. If he's going to if he's going to continue to take the kind of punishment that he is in NFL games, you would want him to bulk up a little bit without him losing his top end speed. I know that can be difficult sometimes, and especially with how locked in he is as a route runner. There's those elements. Those are the elements that you have to consider with all that. And then we get further down the line here. I mean, even with practice squad players, and we gave up on Travis Fulgham. We ended up giving reserves future deal to Deion Kane, who is somebody Sirianni really likes that he had coached up in Indianapolis, and Greg Ward. Them really
Greg
trying to
Ward,
define a role for
he's like
him.
here and there. John Hightower was like non-existent.
Yeah, so I mean, the receiver core doesn't really look all that promising the way some people have felt about it. Um, so if the draft is not the ultimate solution for that, we look at the pool of free agents in this receiver class, and it's kind of high quality. I'm not going to say star studded, but it's very high quality. If and there's no way that we're going to grab Devonte Adams. I mean, he's going to be so expensive. I think he just got franchise tagged by Green Bay. You got Allen Robinson, Chris Godwin. Jamison Crowder is a decent pickup if you want a cheaper option. T.Y. Hilton, one of
That
those.
would be a
One of those.
cheaper option. The
I
most
mean, one of
expensive
those.
option that you're going to get in free agency, if you even dare want to even try to go for it, the most expensive option right here in free agency is Devonte Adams.
Yeah, yeah, and he's definitely going to be. I mean, Odell is probably going to bring big dollars depending where he goes, and then you go and then you go further.
I honestly still think it's Devonte Adams. So I don't care
Yeah,
who's in free agency. I think Devonte Adams is probably the most expensive receiver in this draft, to be honest, or
yeah,
in free agency rather.
and then you go down the list a little bit. If you don't want to drop that big money, on a veteran, if you don't want to drop that big money on a veteran receiver, and you still want to add, if you still want to add youth to the squad, Chris Godwin is still going to add you that youth if you feel like
And Godwin can
paying the
provide you
price
that.
tag for him. And then we just go down the list here. Zach Pascal from the Colts.
Yeah, Zach Pascal.
Mike Williams. A lot of
Mike
people.
Williams, yeah, that's another guy. That's another
That's
guy
the
that
that's
people have
the
talked about.
consensus favorite right now is Mike Williams. And we go further down, Chris Conley. I don't think the Cardinals are going to let Christian Kirk walk. And then
Yeah,
you
I
just
think
keep
they keep
going.
him to be an option for Kyler to throw to.
D-
He's gonna still probably have DeAndre Hopkins next year.
yeah,
And he's obviously still gonna have Zach Ertz next year. So
I mean,
realistically, I don't think they give up Christian Kirk whatsoever.
yeah, I don't see it either. But he may be available. D.D. Westbrook, James Washington. Uh, you know, I
There's a
mean,
lot of guys that could be available for the Eagles. It's just gonna depend on cap room.
Yeah, and I think we start. I think we start 27. I think we start 27 million under the cap or something like that. I don't exactly remember, but we are in decent shape. But really, I think the receiver that the Eagles need to look for specifically to add not only to depth but to add a bit of balance in terms of the passing game is we really don't have that 50-50 guy that can challenge vertically, over the top, one on one. I'm going to reach a higher apex than you type of receiver. And Mike Williams is that favorite, to be capable of doing that. And of course, yeah, he's going to take some targets away from Devonte Smith and whoever else fills out that receiver room. But you do want a little bit of that at the same time, especially for the amount of concerns that we have had with Smith and him needing to bulk up. And if he can take that kind of punishment week in and week out, he did a good job with it. But still, if you're going to want him featured as the guy, as the number one receiver, you need a little bit of a better balance. And that's where, free agency can even fill that kind of need. So, yeah, receiver has got a lot of work. We got a lot of work to do at receiver. And, it's not going to be.
Figure out where a receiver is
Yeah.
going to be for next
And
year.
it's not going to
If we
be.
do get a receiver, which High Roseman, again, I'm watching you. Get a receiver, please.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not going to be completely negative either if Quez Watkins has to drop to the number 3, because of course that only kicks Jalen Reagor out of the pecking order, which I think a lot of us would want at this point. If you pick up a free agent receiver, that knocks Jalen Reagor out of the equation a little bit. I know the front office is not going to want that. Howie Roseman is not going to want that, but at some point, you got to learn when to pull the plug. I mean, they haven't pulled the plug yet on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I have no idea why. It's just he's limited to blocking assignments on special teams. He was supposed to be our 50-50 guy, and then when you drop that when you limit his production and the responsibilities that he has to carry out, it's a telltale sign that it's just not working with him as a pass catching receiver the way he was supposed to be coming out of college at Stanford. It's just it's done. It's done. You gotta pull the plug. There's a little bit of a reset button that has to be pressed on this receiving core for any kind of extra help that you can give to not only Jalen Hurts but that locker room. The receivers don't really have a veteran to look upon, to lead them into battle, so to speak. A guy that's been there, done that. For instance, the cornerbacks have had that guy in Darius Slay. Big Play Slay was there to help lead that cornerback group. The receivers haven't had that in quite some time. And while you can consider Greg Ward more of that veteran mold,
FYI, is also the oldest receiver on the team.
Yeah, and that's not saying much. So you got to do your due diligence here and properly upgrade the receiver position. And it's got to be one of those guys. Allen Robinson, Mike Williams, Chris Godwin. If you want to spend the money on one of them, go for it. It's not only going to help your team, it's not going to only help your team as a whole, but it's going to help a developing quarterback in having another reliable pass target. Because, really, who was the most reliable pass target? I think it was that rookie Devonte Smith. And yeah, you could put Dallas Goedert in that category too, but he had too many crucial drops when Hurts needed him the most. So a rookie as almost a rookie as your most reliable pass catcher, that's not a recipe for success. So yeah, we got to do something to better add depth to the receiver position. So speaking of Dallas Goedert, I think this is one area. I think this is one area that hasn't been talked about enough, and it's the tight end position. Because, of course, Dallas Goedert is leading the charge. He is that guy. He got paid to be the focal point, that number one tight end, undisputed. Nobody's touching him. Okay, it's all fine and dandy. But do we have a definitive placement at that number 2 spot? I don't think so. I don't think it's Richard Rodgers. I don't think it's Jack Stoll. It's certainly not going to be Tyree Jackson because, unfortunately, the injury bug has bitten him. And, he comes back from a back injury, I believe, and then he's gone again with a torn ACL. So,
and we also got rid of Zach Ertz, too. So that really
Zach Ertz being gone, yeah.
But we mainly just got Tate Gowan in draft capital.
Yeah. So, and then, Richie Mack posted this comment about almost 15 minutes ago, but he says, speaking of cap hell, Dallas Goedert's contract counts as $21 million in dead cap next season. And a lot of that is going to be fluctuated by what we do with our offensive linemen and, and even personnel on the defense. But, we're going to leave the offense after the tight end position. Of course, because I think we have a good idea on how the offensive line is going to look, barring some retirement questioning and, and who's coming back and who isn't. I mean, I really don't have much question when it comes to the offensive line because as long as I know Jeff Stoutland is my coach at that spot, I got nothing to worry about because we have one of the deepest offensive line rooms in football, if not the deepest, as to how well they play week in and week out and, inserting backups in a pinch, anything that we need to do in that regard. Jeff Stoutland has these guys ready on a weekly basis, and it's invaluable. It's honestly invaluable. So, and we've known this going into the draft year in and year out. What has been one of the biggest agendas in the draft? Howie always loves to build up the trenches, offensive line, defensive line. We've managed that so well over the last few years, and minus free agency where Jamon Brown comes in and ends up being a massive.
Screw him. Let's not discuss him anymore.
Jason Peters just needs to hang up the cleats at 38, 39, 40 years old.
Jason Peters, a.k.a. the 95-year-old.
But, and then you have to give it to him. You also have to give it to him when you see guys who used to be Eagles, but they're starting for other football teams. And whether it was Big V in Vitae, Matt Pryor ends up being a starter for the Colts. You've seen Vitae over for the Detroit Lions. He ended up being a starter over there. That's just a testament to how damn good of a coach Jeff Stoutland is and how we were still able to transition from those players and keep this offensive line going. It's, there's really no discussion over there. But getting back to the tight end position here, like I said, outside of Dallas Goedert, I have no idea how our future is going to look at the tight end position. It's kind of bleak.
We could use a tight end.
It honestly is. I mean, the only other bright spot outside of Dallas Goedert is our undrafted rookie in Jack Stoll. I mean, for what Jack is, he looks pretty damn good out there on the field. blocking assignments and out to catch a pass, here and there. But of course, he still has some things to clean up, and sometimes his blocking assignments weren't all that accurate. His timing was a little bit off in that regard, and in the lack of preventing pressure. But those things are going to come when, like I said, he's an undrafted rookie. There's, that it happened to them for a reason, but still, all in all, he made an impact on this football team with the lack of depth at the tight end position. And like I just said, Tyree Jackson has a difficulty of staying on the field already, and we were hoping for him to be one of the more intriguing projects that we see in the division with the Washington football team and how they're converting their quarterback into a tight end. Logan Thomas getting that fat extension. He ends up getting hurt, and we thought that we had that. We thought we had our Logan Thomas in Tyree Jackson, and there we go. He gets hurt again. It hurts the depth.
Yeah,
Richard
exactly.
Rodgers.
Exactly. That was the problem with Tyree Jackson, was just injuries, especially. And Lane Dickerson was also in that situation when he played at Bama. The problem was with him was that he kept getting injured over and over, and he kept tearing his ACL. He had injuries here and there, and it's just like everybody gets injured, and that's why, and that's what they're like pros and cons are, but mainly their cons right there is how much they get injured all the time, and Tyree Jackson is like one of those guys right there.
Yeah. Eagles Uncensored, AK, what is going on? Another Eagles content creator that was recently featured on Touchdown Talk, keeping the series going, keeping it alive. We almost had ourselves a 3-hour episode, major contributor to not only his own channel, but the peers around him. And can't thank him enough for helping me keep this ever-growing show alive and having some great football talk on the channel. Good to see you around, AK, as always. And, as we keep going with this tight end spot, and we're already over an hour in the discussion, and we'll see if we can cut it down a little. We'll see if we can cut it down a little bit. But like I said, tight end is going to be the last that we speak of on the offense, and it's interesting to me because, I mean, depending on what we do in the draft, I have heard from other podcasts and people talking about it around the league that the Eagles could very well use another second round pick on a tight end, to bolster that position and put a proper number 2 behind Dallas Goedert. Because we have always thrived on the 12 and 13 personnel formations. And, while Jack Stoll is looking good in terms of development, we don't know what we're going to have in Jack towards the coming future. So if that answer at the tight end position does not come out of the draft, if it's not there, free agency has some decent tight ends available that are relatively cheap. And personally, I'm looking at a couple of tight ends here. And I don't know what kind of contract these guys are going to try and get with their respective teams. But there's a few tight ends on this list that jump out to me that I think would be a great number 2 next to Dallas Goedert. Robert Tonyan from Green Bay, O.J. Howard from the Buccaneers, David Njoku from the Cleveland Browns, and if he does not get an extension from the Miami Dolphins, Mike Gesicki would be a great number 2 next to Dallas Goedert that would not necessarily, take I don't think he would take a lot of receptions away from Goddard, although the numbers suggest otherwise. 73 catches for 780 yards, averaging 11 yards a catch. Is Gesicki considered a number one tight end around the lead? Around the league? Yes and no. Is he certainly a number one for the Dolphins? Absolutely. Do I think he's better than Goddard? No. So, I mean, Gesicki would be the perfect 1-2 scenario for this football team, although I don't think it would happen. But I would look more along the lines of like a David Njoku, O.J. Howard, or Robert Tonyan from the Green Bay Packers. Those four tight ends in free agency, I think, should be very attractive, acquisitions that the Eagles can make. What do you think about the tight end position?
Yeah, I definitely think with the four tight ends that you said, I definitely agree. I think those four tight ends in free agency, I think they definitely stand out. But I feel like the best one, if we had to go ahead, because assuming if it doesn't happen in the draft this year, that we do get a tight end in this case, even though Jack Stoll, as an undrafted rookie from Nebraska, he didn't do too shabby. I'm not gonna lie, but he's not gonna be our number two because we need a guy who will end up doing the receptions. And I know Jack Stoll, he can be a good tight end, but a good tight end for blocking. We need a good second tight end that can help out with the receiving behind Dallas Goedert. And even if Dallas Goedert is injured, someone who can come in and take his role and be that healthy guy in his place. So definitely I'm looking at one of those four. But the one guy that I look at to be a good number two tight end, probably behind Dallas Goedert, probably Robert Tonyan in my opinion, because you saw what he did with the Green Bay Packers. You saw what he did with Aaron Rodgers. You saw what he did around the pieces that he had. He was making receptions happen, and before the injury happened, and then when Mercedes Lewis took over, I believe that's who took over for him, then he was doing pretty well. But I think Robert Tonyan, I think he could definitely come in and definitely be that second tight end that we could need. But especially if the help is needed behind Dallas Goedert, and if Jack Stoll can't really get put in enough to really take that role. So I really like those four tight ends that you said before, but I'm really eyeing Robert Tonyan if we had to take a tight end in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be okay with that. I'm not exactly sure if Tonyan is one of them that had some injury concerns at one point throughout the year. I think he was missing at one point during the season.
Last year he did because he was out for the year, and then I believe Mercedes Lewis had to take over as tight end for the Packers. I forget if they had Jay Sternberger or not, but I have absolutely no idea. But I think it was Mercedes Lewis who was taking over as tight end, but I think that was mainly only the only injured year that Robert Tonyan had that really impacted his football year last year for Green Bay. I really do think that was the only one that really impacted his career for Green Bay, and I really think that was the only one. So I wouldn't say that Tonyan is really like honestly quote unquote injury prone, but I really do think that last year might have impacted him a little bit in terms of like his status on how he's going to feel going forward into his career. But I really do think that Robert Tonyan can still be that second guy to come into Philly, and if we want that second tight end, he can definitely come into Philly and be the guy that we need, because we're not going to go out and make a trade for a tight end. We're not going to get like the Zach Ertz's. We're not going to get Mark. We're not going to get like Mark Andrews. We're not going to get Travis Kelce. Get a simple guy in free agency and bring him in. But I'm definitely eyeing Robert Tonyan because we're not getting any of those stars that I said before in a big time trade. And I feel like a guy in the draft, I don't even know who the tight ends even are in the draft, maybe except for maybe like one of them. But I really am eyeing Robert Tonyan, and if we could bring him in, he'd be a great tight end too behind Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, so I was right in terms of the injury concerns with Tonyan because he did only play 8 games this year. I had the feeling that he did miss time, and I also had the feeling that I think 3 of the 4 tight ends that I mentioned have had some moderate injury concerns at one point in time, minus Mike Gesicki. I'm not sure on that one. But what is one thing that those 4 free agent tight ends have in common? And I'm almost enticed to put Eric Ebron in there too, because I do feel that he would be a decent fit. But, even including him, what's one thing that all these tight ends have in common? They're under 30 years old, and they're not very expensive. Tunyon's value, I think, is 3.3 million. Ninjoku, 2.3 million. Gasecki, who I think is due for an extension, but right now he's only 1.6 million. If he doesn't get it, OJ Howard, 2.7 million. There's options there available if the team does not primarily focus on the draft as an answer to add to the depth of the tight end room. Because, I mean, with Tyree Jackson on and off of the field with injury, Jack Stoll is still he still needs a little bit more to go in terms of development. They just gave a futures deal to Noah Togiai, but he still needs to come up a little bit. With development as well. Never really had the chance to be activated. He was always on the practice squad, that sort of thing. So, I mean, yeah, we're hurting at the tight end position in terms of quality depth. Not so much to really impact the superiority of Dallas Goedert the way we felt when the shoe was on the other foot when Zach Ertz was still here, and him and Dallas Goedert had to share the field, because of that fact. And I don't feel that with the options that there is available, I don't think that we would be in that situation again. But we still need somebody. We still need somebody respected enough to complement Dallas Goedert on the field when we're running like 12, 13, 12, 13 personnel. I mean, we do need to bolster the depth at that tight end spot. So
I definitely agree 100%. I 100% agree. I definitely think we can hopefully bring somebody in to be that tight end too. And hopefully one of those 4 guys can definitely be the guy to come in and play behind Dallas Goedert.
Yeah. So with that, we're approaching almost the. I think we're approaching close to the.
On mine, it says about the 120 mark, 1 hour 20 minute mark.
So we're almost there in terms of that like soft limit for the conclusion of this show here. And I do feel at the same time that this next area is not going to have much of a length of discussion, because we already know what's going on, and of course that is of the defense. We already know what's going on there. But before we get into it quick here, another quick reminder and appreciation for everybody that has come at some point to view the show here as we are getting ready to wrap it up with the last few minutes of discussion. Thank you to even just the 2 viewers that are currently dedicating some of their time to listen to what I have to say or what BLSG has to say. It's appreciated. It's appreciated constantly. Like I've been saying, you guys already get it by now. Coach Dante, what is up, man? Lucas Hallman was also in the building. Appreciate everybody. But yeah, so I have mentioned this in previous episodes as well. Shout out to Birdman951. Of course, I keep my gift with me that is now on my display table, and he has also given me a sticker of his, part of his selection of merch. So I thought that while I got this concept going on here, maybe I can add to that. So for any content creator that does have their own merch, let me know if you would let me know if you would like to have some of it, some of your merch displayed on my table here, for my setup. I would love to add to the collection. And Birdman's a little bit lonely there. So, but yeah, shout out to Birdman 951. But he could use some company on the table. So, for any other content creators that would love to join him and be added to my display, I would love to do that. Just be a bird brother to the content creator community. So, with that, I think we can use the last 10 minutes of this show, BLSG, to go over some of the defense because I think, with how many times it has reared its ugly head this year, a lot of the problem areas have been very obvious. And not to mention the most being the defensive coordinator as the primary punching bag for this Eagles fan base, and everybody wants Jonathan Gannon up and out of here.
And even we do. We want him out of here.
So, in terms of that, and it is what it is. None of us really know why. We do have our speculations as to why. We have our opinions and our thoughts. But this man is a favorite candidate for head coaching vacancies across the NFL. Specifically, so he has conducted 2 interviews with the Houston Texans, and he is a front runner for that position. He has also interviewed for, I believe, the Vikings and the Chicago Bears. But right now, I think he is the top favorite for the Houston Texans. So this may be a obvious question to one BLSG here, a part of the rest of the fan base that does not want Jonathan Gannon back. How much of a loss, if any, would Jonathan Gannon be if he was not the defensive coordinator for the Eagles? And who would you replace him with?
Well, I think I talked about it with Joey Shakes the other night in terms of how much I want Jonathan Gannon gone, which honestly I do, because this year with Jonathan Gannon was literally god awful. Like what kind of packages were we bringing every single game, Gannon? What kind of packages were we bringing at every single quarterback? Especially the Patrick Mahomes, even the Jimmy G's sometimes, the Dak Prescotts out there.
Justin Herbert.
Herbert, yes. Justin Herbert. That's another guy I forgot to mention beforehand. And even some of these other guys. And what kind of defensive packages were we bringing at these quarterbacks? We were literally bringing garbage packages. We weren't playing good defensive packages. We were playing garbage packages. That was a horrendous year by Gannon. I want him gone. 10 out of 10 on a scale of 1 to 10. I want him gone at a 10 right now. I want him out of Philly. Get him out. I am done with Jonathan Gannon after 1 year. Jonathan Gannon's a one and done. And the person I am looking to replace Jonathan Gannon, he hasn't been talked about a lot. Make me eat my words. Bring Vic Fangio to Philly, please. Vic Fangio, he's been talked about for that defensive coordinator. And I talked about this with Joey Shakes the other day. And he asked me about who he wanted as defensive coordinator. And he also said Vic Fangio because he has been talked about for a potential defensive coordinator spot. And if anybody could use a guy like Vic Fangio right now, it's the Eagles. Because Jim Schwartz, we don't need to hear the story on him. And now Jonathan Gannon, we don't need to hear a story on him. They were both pretty much god-awful apart from when Jim Schwartz was as the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. But I don't give a crap about that. I don't give a crap about Jonathan Gannon. Bring Vic Fangio to Philly, please, and let's just hope that this defense can definitely be a lot better than last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And while I'm not going to try and absolve Jonathan for all of his defensive sins, of course, while I'm not going to try and absolve him or defend him or whatnot, but sometimes you have to call it for what it is. Sometimes you have to cut it down the middle and add a little bit of context. And this is one thing that I've talked about with AK on a previous episode. This is one thing I've also brought up to Nightings, and the one thing that you know that I can point out where there's a similarity between Jonathan Gannon and Jim Schwartz is that they both suffered from a lack of talent on their defensive units. And this year for Gannon, he had a good secondary for the most part to lean on. The secondary wasn't the biggest problem. It was the fact that, the safety position did not have depth. It was, Rodney and Anthony Harris are bust. Marcus Epps was limited in his production and in his role. Kayvon Wallace has not taken that next step yet. And whether
The
it's some
linebackers were god awful.
yeah, and whether it's some guys on that practice squad at the safety spot, none of them were really, really ready to take that next step either. I mean, when I talk about Marcus Epps and Kayvon Wallace, they played more special team snaps than defensive snaps at the safety position, and that's not exactly what you want out of your depth players. You want them on the field, you want them progressing, you want them making contributions defensively. So there's a little bit of a unfortunate consequence there. Linebackers, disaster for the most part. The Eric Wilson experiment was terrible. He didn't last. Eric Wilson was supposed to be that guy. He was supposed to be the
He was supposed to be that linebacker that was supposed to step up and be the linebacker for us.
Not the linebacker in terms of the captain, that number one, that he's skilled enough
But he was supposed to be like a better linebacker than what we've had in the past couple of years.
Yeah, like he wasn't necessarily skilled enough to render Pro Bowl votes for that matter, but he was supposed to give us some quality depth. He was supposed to be a guy that would lead some of his teammates into battle in a ways of them trying to get used to this system that Gannon's trying to implement defensively. He was supposed to be one of those guys that the linebackers can lean on, that Eric knew the defense, much like Anthony Harris. That's the reason why Eric Wilson and Anthony Harris were added to this defense, because they've already been in that Mike Zimmer system. And, well, we already seen it was short-lived for Eric Wilson, as he didn't make it whatsoever. And then we found some unsung heroes again. Whether it's TJ Edwards making his appearance once more as a tandem next to Alex Singleton. Alex Singleton played okay for what he is for the most part, but we know that he is going to have a ceiling, and we need to upgrade from him. We need to upgrade from TJ Edwards. We need to upgrade from Jannard Avery for what it's worth.
It was also like here and there year for Jannard Avery too.
Yeah. Yeah, and sometimes these guys were used out of position, and they tried it a little bit with the rookie Patrick Johnson. He seemed out of position. He seemed out of place. I would have liked to see Jannard Avery a little more in edge rusher packages, to use his athleticism to take down some of the slower tackles, get around him quicker. And and then we get to the defensive line where Gannon with a little bit of improv in his scheme, whether it's dropping DTs back into coverage, like we've seen Fletcher Cox drop back into some coverage zone in the Tampa Bay playoff game, whether we see that or we see Josh Sweat not being utilized correctly, the continued downfall of Derek Barnett, losing Brandon Graham to an Achilles injury. That's just, there is so many consistent holes on this defense to where you have to feel sorry for Gannon in a sense, because he has limited resources to work with, but at the same time, it's still a part of his responsibility, to lead these guys and be like, well, you know what? Let's try and turn a corner here. Work with the coaching staff. Get these guys into better positions to utilize their strengths and cover their weaknesses. And well, unfortunately, that wasn't done enough to the majority of the Eagles fan base, and that's why he's that's why he's as disliked as he is right now. So it looks like your top candidate for replacing Jonathan Gannon is Vic Fangio. I'm not necessarily opposed to that personally. I also am intrigued by the idea of Don Martindale from the Baltimore Ravens, to where him and
Yeah,
Harbaugh
he's
have
been talking
parted
about.
ways.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
Martindale would also be a great pickup in my opinion. And Mike Zimmer's floating around there a little bit. Another guy, another head coach who just got fired. Minnesota Vikings. We all know that. Some of these head coaches are going to want to take lesser roles to build themselves back up into maybe another head coaching interview. But I don't know if you're going to want to go from a hand-me-down in Jonathan Gannon, who ran the same system as Mike Zimmer, but to a lesser degree, and still have the same issues that plague Mike Zimmer's scheme while having the same personnel for him to work with. I just don't think it's going to be of any benefit if you're going to go from the next best thing to the real thing in that regard.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, the Ravens coach that you were talking about, he's been talked about too for a potential defensive coordinator spot. But I really like Vic Fangio, honestly, and it's fine if we like to part ways. We each give our personal opinions, but I really like Vic Fangio, honestly. And you like that, and you like the Ravens coach. That's perfectly fine. But as long as we get someone that can be better than Jonathan Gannon and will not bring these stupid packages up and cannot be as crappy as Jonathan Gannon was, I will be perfectly fine with that.
And of course, there's always the flip side to this, and how I was saying before that Gannon and Schwartz were plagued by a lack of talent in that defensive group, and the same thing could very well be said for any other defensive coordinator that comes in here. But if we were to start over and have these players learn another new defensive scheme, there's an added responsibility, like how Jonathan Gannon went into last year's draft and picked the players that he wanted on defense. While it ended up working out because Milton Williams is pretty damn good, and he showed some nice promise in his rookie year. So you would have to imagine that the same level of expectation is to be met with a more experienced defensive coordinator that has a little bit more of an idea, like a been there, done that. They've been in these multiple like game time clinching moments before. And with experience comes wisdom, and that's one of the bigger hopes here, is if we land one of these more veteran defensive coordinators, that we can be set up for a little more success in trying to build something over and over again with a less experienced individual at that position. So I think we have reached a verdict on the. I think we have reached a verdict on the
Yeah, it
defensive.
looks like we have reached the hour and a half mark.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, defensively, we obviously reached a verdict there. It wasn't hard to figure out. We already know the positions that we need to address at that spot, as well as the defensive line, and of course, there's still plenty more to talk about. With the depth of the D line, the linebackers, cornerbacks, safeties, with these guys, on expiring contracts that are set to become free agents. Do we like the coaching personnel at certain position groups? Some of that hasn't been discussed in this point in time, but sometimes we don't have the time to go over all of that, and can't have it drag on all the time. But yeah, we have reached an hour and a half already. Plenty of discussion has happened. Plenty of well received and well received opinions, feedback. A lot of positivity has happened today. Definitely in terms of another successful episode of Touchdown Talk, keeping it going on the channel here. And well, that is going to officially conclude this installment of Touchdown Talk. Episode 7, presenting with BLSG as this week's guest. And of course, I'm going to work my magic in trying to come up with more opportunities to have more guests on here this week. I did have 2 in mind, but one of them got moved to next week. So I'm going to see, in terms of content creators, who else would want to come on and and talk that touchdown talk with myself, Lindy Endzone. Thank you, everybody, for watching this installment, episode 7. Another big thank you to BLSG for devoting an hour and a half of his time to come over here, talk some Eagles football, let us know his views, his viewpoints, his opinions, perspectives, whatever you want to call it. That's just the way it works. We're fans at the end of the day, but that does not distort our love for this football team in making this the hobby that it is as YouTube content creators. So anything you would want to close out the episode with? The floor is yours, BLSG, before we say the goodbyes.
Well, I'll just close it out by saying this, just to find all my social media handles. Y'all can find me on YouTube, BLSG. Either you search that in the search bar, or like Lindy said, click that link in the description down below. Go give your boy a subscription over there. Help me reach that 300 mark. We're currently at 264 right now. I haven't checked the update to see if we got any more new subscribers or not. I haven't checked yet, but I'm sure we didn't reach 300 yet. That's for damn sure. But y'all can find me on YouTube, BLSG, like I said before. And then follow me on Twitter, BLSG20. Give your boy a follow there. And yeah, Lindy, I appreciate you for having me on it. As always, man, go Birds!
Yes, sir. Bleeding green, fly, Eagles, fly. And, that subscription is also free to click on my channel as well. If you like the diversity of fandom that I bring to the table as a Dallas Mavericks fan and a Philadelphia Eagles fan, they don't go together whatsoever. I know, I get it. As well as my Atlanta Braves fandom, World Series champs, cough, cough. But I'd love to have you a part of the End Zone fam. Of course, the Eagles do come first over here, and that subscribe is free for me as well. But for myself and Lindy Endzone, scoring another touchdown with Touchdown Talk today, taking the lead for the Eagles one video at a time. And for BLSG, we thank you for joining us in episode 7 of Touchdown Talk. That'll do it for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good night. Fly Eagles, fly bleed green. Go Mavs, FFLs. Take care of yourselves. Stay warm, and I will see you next time.